Cool. So should we get started?
Sure.
Awesome. Well, we appreciate you all being here. I know it's early in the morning, so thank you for the handful of you that are here. It's much appreciated. Just to start, we can introduce ourselves and kind of go into it. Just to clarify, this is sort of a combination of the documentary we're working on about the Postal franchise along with Postal itself. We can talk about Postal 4, we can talk about brain damage, as well as the documentary. So I'm Jason Sikorsky. I'm one part producer and director of the upcoming documentary, Going Postal, The Legacy Foretold.
Nice. Yeah, I'm Tad Slee. I'm also the second part director and producer of the documentary. We've been working on it for about 3 years now, and been working with this great guy, Mike J. Mike J, why don't you tell us what you do?
I'm Mike J from Running with Scissors. I've been with the company since 2001. I started as a marketing assistant with Vince. I went to high school with his son. Just happened to get the job because we laughed. And I've been there ever since. So almost 21 years of making this game. So it's cool to have these guys following us around and I don't know, filming all of our fun times.
Yeah, I mean, just to start, myself and Tad, we both went to the University of Arizona. We did film school. I was in a film program parallel to his. We never met in school, but post-graduation, we met at an event, realized we were both living in Tucson at the time. Both were doing filmmaking. One thing led to another. We eventually moved in with each other as roommates. And became close friends, you know, along the way. We decided we wanted to work on some projects together. I was doing a lot of cannabis content and music videos and weddings, doing a lot of production assistant work on reality shows, and it just really wasn't fulfilling my creative cup. And I think, Tad, yeah, you kind of felt the same way?
Yeah. So I approached Jason. I said, hey, I want to do something along the lines of what we were doing in this cannabis industry, where it was mostly almost a MTV style show, but we wanted to do it in the video game industry because we're big gamers. And that's when we both really chatted about Postal and kind of discovered, hey, you know, we know a mutual friend in Tucson that knows Mike J, and that's how we got connected to him. We had lunch together. Mm-hmm. That's when I think you had just shaved your beard at that time.
I did.
And I remember you just having the biggest fit because you were a baby face for the first time.
Well, I didn't want people to meet me without a beard.
And that's how I remember you.
Yeah.
Yes,
I know.
Yeah, it was much appreciated because we were able to all sit down, have a bowl of ramen together, and kind of talk about our vision for the documentary. I mean, like Tad was saying, initially it started off as sort of a web series idea, because we were working on a cannabis web series for many years. So we kind of wanted to go about that format, and then we both realized we wanted to make a quote-unquote movie. So it kind of turned into a full-fledged documentary. That's sort of our goal, is to complete a 90-minute documentary. So yeah, we've been shooting it ever since. We conceptualized it in 2019, and you know, we filmed as much as we could. COVID happened, unfortunately, and you know, obviously with the state of the world at the time, there wasn't a lot you could do in terms of production and whatnot, and that kind of shifted our gears to doing some more remote stuff, which actually was very helpful because our original plan was to fly out to all these places in Europe to do all these interviews. As you guys,
it actually started with a bang though. Like we all went to PAX East. Like there's this big expo. They're following us around. We have a booth. You know, it's like the end of February 2020. So we were kind of all like, oh, is this the right place to be? But it was fun. There was a lot of people and we're having a good time. And then like a week later, it was like, okay.
Yeah, you're
Can't
right.
do anything.
We did hit PAX East before everything shut down, so that we got to squeeze in some decent production there. But all in all, you know, everything's back up and running. It's been a good time so far. We have over 40 interviews.
Yeah, it's been crazy just how everything has shifted, because we were originally, you know, like you said, we were going to be traveling across the world, and we've had interviews in Germany and Russia and Norway and Sweden and France. It's been crazy, you know, everywhere that we've had.
Well, I'm sorry you didn't get to go to all those places.
I know. I was looking forward to it. So we had to get creative in, you know, how we were going to do these interviews, and what we decided on, which has been working really well, is we kind of establish a relationship with camera operators in these countries, and they will go and remote interview these interviewees for us, and then we will host the interview via Zoom or Google Meeting, and then the operator will kind of pack up and we'll get the footage later at another time. But that's been working really well, and it's kind of opened my eyes that filmmaking isn't you're not limited to where you are. You can be anywhere.
Yeah, like most, I think, industries now, right? But yeah, with that being said, I know we talked a lot about the documentary. How about we show you guys the trailer and we can kind of go from there. Unfortunately, we don't have an AV guy here, so we weren't able to plug it through the speakers. Audio is going to play through that guy. It doesn't sound terrible, but is there a light switch?
I don't know.
No.
Nope.
Nope.
No light switch.
All right.
Maybe. Would you mind checking to see if there's a light switch maybe over here? Cool.
Welcome.
Thanks for joining us.
Great costumes.
We're just about to play the trailer for a documentary, so just in time.
Might have to take off your bag.
It never comes off.
It never comes off.
All right.
Oh, there it is.
The game Postal is creating such a backlash that it's making obviously the game is not for children.
You are full of shit. Going postal.
Welcome back, everybody. Another school shooting, and people are asking, how could this happen? Do we live in a culture that promotes and even glorifies violence in video games and in the movies?
Going postal has taken root as a slang phrase for going more than just a bit berserk. Tonight, it's at the heart of a controversial new video game where carnage is the key to winning.
There's a new game in town that has U.S. mail carriers, their bosses, friends, and families, shall we say, a little ticked off.
Violent video and computer games are taking a new disturbing turn. Instead of warriors battling warriors, the victims are innocent bystanders. The game Postal is creating such a backlash that it's making headlines in newspapers all around the country, like the Wall Street Journal. You can if you like what it is.
We wanted to do a game where you basically can just go off non-stop and shoot.
You talk about how realistic it is, and then now you're trying to say that it looks like a cartoon. I've seen your game.
What we've done,
I still think it has no redeeming value.
What's the deal here? Where's the hypocrisy? Where's the honesty? Oh, well, we don't do stories. Well, then basically you are fake news. You are full of shit.
If I had something to say, I would say to the city or to the state or to Congress to eliminate these violent games, because it does cause things in our children.
Something about being able to, take your friend, blow its head off. All we need is one kid who absorbs this, and even going out and doing some of these things.
It is impossible for me to go into every home and do what every parent should be doing.
Video games don't cause kids to shoot up schools. 99.99% of people know the difference between reality and video games.
I remember politicians coming out and, Grand Theft Auto and Post, and I'm thinking, you've never played a video game like this in your life.
It's the game that some say everyone wanted to make, but no one had the balls to make.
The world's psycho. I mean, there's school shootings all the time. There is violence abound. There's never going to be a time where there's not going to be some sort of violent act in the world where Postal's going to be okay to you. Like, you just have to be okay with Postal.
Going postal. Going postal.
Hi there. Would you like to sign my petition?
Don't go there.
In action.
Well, thank you for bearing with the very subpar audio. Again, apologies, we couldn't hook it up to these speakers. I guess a quick question for y'all, who's familiar with the Postal franchise? Awesome, so some of you, but not everybody. That's totally fine. That's sort of the point of this documentary, right, is to unveil the legacy of this franchise. So, Mike J., maybe you want to talk a little bit about Postal itself?
So, violent video games, they're everywhere nowadays. In the mid-90s, they were kind of getting bigger, but most of the violent video games were shooting aliens and space marines and that kind of stuff. Grand Theft Auto hadn't come out, and our company, Running with Scissors, decided it was time to make a game where you could just shoot everybody. So, the word postal had been sort of popularized in the 90s because a few postal employees had shot up their place of employment. And so we thought it would be funny to call the game Postal. And turns out it wasn't particularly funny to a lot of people, including the US government. And they sued us for trademarking the word postal, which we won, so don't worry. But the first Postal game came out. It was a top-down isometric shooter. It really was just a nonsensical take on Robotron, which is a classic arcade game where you just, one stick spins you and the other stick shoots, and that's all it was. It didn't really have a plot. It didn't have any sort of overarching story for real. Like, you just shot 90% of the hostiles in each map, and for whatever reason, that game pissed everybody off. It got banned all over the world. It got blacklisted in the United States. Senator Joseph Lieberman of Connecticut took the game in front of the United States Senate one year, saying that Calvin Klein jean ads, Marilyn Manson, and the game Postal are the top three things awful for the kids. And so you hear this and you say, oh, that's a great marketing campaign. This guy just sold you millions of games. Well, I mean, it did give us longevity, but all it did was make all the games come off the shelves. Our publisher was a company called Ripcord, which was a subsidiary of Panasonic, and Panasonic was like, get this game out of here. And they took it off the shelves everywhere. They gave us a bunch of money and they said, go away. And so we were well known, but we hadn't sold a lot of games back in the 90s. And very shortly after Postal 1 came out, Grand Theft Auto 1 came out, which was not a huge hit. I mean, Grand Theft Auto didn't become a force until Grand Theft Auto 3 came out, which was about 3 years later. We sort of waited out the time that it took for us to get the rights back to the game, and then we started working on Postal 2, which is the game we're actually pretty well known for. At that point in time, every violent video game out there did what we were doing in the 90s, and it wasn't a big deal. So we decided to make Postal a first-person shooter. We used the Unreal Engine. We made it significantly funnier. We gave it at least what appeared to be a storyline. And turns out we were a toxic brand at that point. Like, nobody would touch us with a 10-foot pole. We couldn't get a publisher. Consoles didn't want it. So we ended up signing a deal with some shyster company, and Postal 2 was sort of released around the world, and it got trashed by the media for just and unjust reasons. We were given the first 0 out of 10 for a video game. And the famous quote from that Computer Gaming World article written by Robert Coffey, also in the documentary, just so you know, they interviewed this guy. His quote was, "Until they package syphilis, Postal 2 is the worst product ever foisted upon the consumer."
He stands by it still.
You know these quotes like Bible verses, I swear.
I do,
Wow.
yeah.
I'm impressed.
Well, because of that, we decided that the worst game ever was our trademark, and we've been using that on our products ever since. We've been throwing that on our boxes, we put that on our shirts, and we proudly spout that we make the worst game ever. Unfortunately for Robert and Computer Gaming World, Postal 2 turned out to have a significantly longer life than anybody would have expected. I mean, it came out and it did really well in countries like Russia and the UK, but the US, it never really took off because we didn't really have a publisher here. I'm gonna fast forward through the next project, which is a game called Postal 3, which is just a total crapshoot. We licensed that to our Russian publishers, who just completely crapped on our brand, released a really, really bad game. Don't ever buy it. So Postal 2 came out in 2003. Postal 3 came out in 2011, so that's a pretty long gap. I mean, it sort of started development really well, and then it fell off because the economy tanked around the world, and the economy in Russia tanked extra hard because oil was worth nothing, and the Russian economy is based on oil. Doesn't really matter. But Postal 3 came out, total crap, 2011. At that point, we're like kind of this shell of a company. I'm personally keeping the company afloat with just like shipping out individual games and shirts and just, keeping us alive. And for years, we had been trying to get our games onto Steam. But Valve wanted nothing to do with us. They were like, your marketing is insane. You tell people to, I'm not supposed to use curse words here. You tell people to do things in your media. Like, we don't want that on Steam. So around 2012, they launched a service called Greenlight, which allowed indie developers to put their games up for submission on the store. Fans would vote on what they wanted to see on Steam. And after that, you were put on Steam. So we put the game up on Greenlight. We hoped that it would get some traction. And it immediately got pulled down by Valve. And for us, it was like, here we go again, banned in another store. And we emailed them and said, hey guys, you're asking for indies to submit their games. Why did you take our game down? And they were like, oh, it really was you putting it up. They just thought that some idiot fan had submitted Postal 2 onto Greenlight. So they're like, all right, we'll give it a fair shot. We'll see what happens. And they put it back up, and it was like top 3 in the voting, and it got through immediately. So for us, we were like, hey, we finally will be able to sell the game in more places than my garage. And it just started selling like crazy. So this is 9 years, 10 years after the game came out, and all of a sudden everybody's buying this game that we made back in the early 2000s. And there was just a few of us keeping this alive. And at that point, we had promised everybody that bought it on Steam, like, hey, if you guys support this and we get onto Steam and we do okay, we'll update it, we'll get it, form factored for the time, we'll put Steamworks in it. And we did all that. We put a little team together, and I mean, we were just, I don't want to say we were making a ton of money, because we were absolutely not. But we were making good money on a 10-year-old game, enough that we needed to spend money on it to fix it and make it better. And we did just that. I mean, we actually ended up putting a team of about 12 together. We fixed the game, and then we had so much extra money left around that we decided to make an add-on for an 11-year-old game. I mean, it was a weird thing to do, and nobody today supports 11-year-old games, but we did. We made an add-on for Postal 2 called Paradise Lost. It's actually better than the original game, so if you don't have it, hit me up. I'll give you guys a free key for it. And then shortly, once we had this team put together, we were like, okay, well, we're a developer again. This is cool. We're back in the game. And we thought it would be a really good idea to remake Postal 1, because, it's kind of this old, buggy thing that was made in the 90s. It hadn't sold a ton of copies because it never really made it out of, the incubation phase with the way it got banned and blacklisted. So our team remade it in Unreal 4. It's actually really good, and nobody bought it. So it was a bad idea. For us, as it turns out, nobody cared for our serious games. Postal 1 is pretty serious. It's not very funny. It's got black humor in it, but it's just a serious shooter. Postal 2 is like slapstick comedy. It's just a big joke. You pee on people. For those of you who don't know, Postal 2 is the game where you pee on people. You use cats as silencers on the end of guns. Right, it really is just a big joke. And the fact that it was taken so seriously around the world blows our mind, because games that are very much more serious in nature and significantly more violent than us are sold on Xbox and at Walmart, and games like Postal 2 get just completely ignored, right? In our history, it was like Manhunt. Manhunt was this game made by Rockstar, which was a game about snuff, okay? You were a prisoner, and they were making you kill people on video. It was really violent. It was really gross. I'm not saying it shouldn't be sold.
It was really fun, too.
Right, no, it was a great game, great game. But you could buy it at Walmart, and you could buy it on Xbox, and you could buy it on PlayStation, and I'm sitting here kicking and screaming to get my game released on a PC store somewhere. So this is just the life of Postal. Postal is this horrible game that nobody really ever saw, but because of the name that it had from the 90s, it just always was considered the bad boy. I mean, yeah, we don't have some big publisher that limits the things I say, clearly. We don't conform to what people want, and that has bothered a lot of companies. And unfortunately for most of them, we're still here today. We actually just released Postal 4 on PC this year. We're currently porting it to consoles. If you're familiar with the product, it's still a little broken, but we're spending a lot of money and time working on it. So if you have it and it's not working for you, I'm sorry. But it will soon. And we just released another game made by a Polish partner of ours called Postal Brain Damaged, and it is actually the best Postal game ever released. And it's probably because we didn't make it. It's a boomer shooter, if you're familiar with the term. What it means is it is a sort of hark back to what shooters originally were. Doom, Quake, Duke Nukem, you know, it has these like pixelated graphics, and it's just a run and gun shooter, except Brain Damage is like crazy and funny and surreal, and it's just awesome. So
really difficult too.
It's very hard, yeah. So right now, like, as crazy it is to say, 26 years later now, well, it's 25. Our 25th anniversary is actually November 4th of this year. So Postal will be 25. We're releasing more games nowadays than we ever have, and they're getting great reviews on Steam. I mean, Postal 4 has kind of taken a hit recently because, like I said, it's a little broken, but Postal 2 has a 96% user score on Steam. That's crazy. Like, we know that's not a 96 quality game. It's just, we're the developer that continuously updates our game for 20 plus years. Postal Brain Damage has its 96% on Steam. Like, it's humbling stuff, right? Like, we just like to laugh and make funny stuff and hope people like it. So it's pretty cool that we're still here doing it. And then the fact that you guys are all here listening to me talk about it is even weirder to me. So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, with that said, as you can see, the history is very interesting, right? A lot of ups and downs. It's a roller coaster. Lots of controversy. So that's why we're making a documentary about the franchise.
And then at one point, you got a movie made about you guys.
Oh, I did skip that part. Yeah, in 2006, we started getting emails from these German fans who were like, hey, Uwe Boll wants to make a movie about you guys. And I don't know if all of you are familiar with the fine work of Dr. Uwe Boll. He has made such classic video game films as Blood Rain and Alone in the Dark,
House of the Dead,
and In the Name of the King, A Dungeon Siege Tale, which is definitely one of the worst movies of all time.
Blubberella?
Yeah, he's made a lot of crap. Okay,
a lot of interesting movies.
I mean, only a few of those came before Postal, but they approached us, and I was like, delete. We're not doing that. And at that time, we were a very tiny company. It was me, the guy that originally started the company, Vince. We were just sort of sitting in a room in his house, keeping the company afloat. And then I got another email about it, and I was like, what is going on? Delete. And we started talking about it, and I was like, well, he makes bad movies, we make bad video games. This might work out. Also, at the time, there just wasn't a lot of video game movies out at that point, like a handful. And so we were like, maybe we should do this. Maybe this will be cool. And so we contacted Uwe, and it turns out he's a really nice guy for all of his faults behind the camera. And so we signed a deal to make this movie, and we wanted this very serious sort of falling down style movie to be made. And he was like, absolutely not. I'm making a slapstick comedy, and it's going to be amazing. And we were like, okay, it's your money. And so he spent $20 million making a movie about our game, which turns out to be his best movie that he's ever made. And it came out nowhere. Just like everything else Postal, it just didn't come out. He finished the Postal movie, and he finished the Dungeon Siege movie at the same time. And Dungeon Siege was his opus. It was his Lord of the Rings. It cost $60 million. It had Ray Liotta and Jason Statham and just this all-star cast of people who just signed on for a paycheck and didn't show up to work. And they had them both finished at the same time, and he had already had multiple box office bombs back to back to back. And a company called NBC Universal happened to be behind these movies, which to us was even crazier. Like, wow, this is going to really come out, and it's going to be a big deal. And I told the lady at Universal, I said, you need to release Postal before you release Dungeon Siege, because if you release Dungeon Siege first, he's done. He's not going to get any more theaters. And they were like, no, it's amazing. And I don't know if any of you have ever seen In the Name of the King, but if you haven't, do yourself a favor and do not watch it. It is that bad. Unless you're into campy crap, it is campy crap.
I remember seeing it in theaters with
I laughed
four
the
other
whole
people.
time.
It was hilarious.
Yeah, and it's not funny.
It's not supposed to be funny.
It's not supposed to be funny at all. It's really that bad. And they were like, no, we have to do this. And for us, we're this little tiny company. I mean, at the time, we were literally 3 people. And we had this $20 million movie done, and it was supposed to come out in theaters all over the country. They were going to do a college tour. We were like, wow, this is cool. Back then, DVDs sold everywhere. We were going to make money off the DVD. We're like, this is going to bring us back to life. This is crazy how this is happening. And then they released Dungeon Siege in 2,000 theaters, and it absolutely tanked like you can't believe. Justifiably so. It was terrible. And after that, the entire marketing budget and release budget for Postal went away. It came out in 11 theaters. And
one of which was in Tucson, right?
I got that theater, yeah. I personally called up a theater in Tucson and I said, will you carry this movie? And they said yes. What?
Oh, did they? Wow.
Yeah, I mean, we did like 20 premieres of the movie. I traveled around the country showing it. It was supposed to be a big deal, and instead it came out nowhere, and the DVD orders went from millions to thousands, and it sort of just never came out anywhere. So if you've ever seen the Postal movie, congratulations. If you want to see it, I sell DVDs for $3 on our website. Or if you have Steam, I will give you a Steam key for it, and you can watch it. It's actually pretty funny. If you watch it a little inebriated, it's excellent. On Tubi, there you go. It used to be on Amazon Prime. It's not there anymore. I can't tell you why. We're not in charge of it, but we host it on Steam. So if you want to get it on Steam, let me know. I have business cards. Everybody come get one before we're done, and I'll hook you up with whatever. I'm not going to give you a copy of Postal 4 or Brain Damage because those are our new products. But anything else, let me know. I'll give it. You got it.
Yeah, we actually did a remote interview with Uwe Boll from Germany. Actually, yeah, really nice guy.
Great dude.
He was awesome on camera. We have Larry Thomas, I'm sorry. We have Chris Coppola. We have Zach
For those of you
Ward.
that don't know who Larry Thomas is, he played the soup Nazi in Seinfeld. And for those of you that don't know what Seinfeld is, it was a very funny show from the 90s.
Probably the most legitimate thing attached to that movie.
No. J.K. Simmons, actually, was in the Postal movie. So before he was an Academy Award winner, he played
all of 10 seconds.
Yeah, he played a political candidate in the Postal movie. There's a lot of, like I said, it's a $20 million movie, which is not huge, but it's also not tiny, and it's actually pretty well done. This movie, on the other hand, that they're working on, needs to come out. So
we're working on it. Yeah, I mean, if you saw the trailer at the end, it was slated for this year. We actually pushed it back to next year. Things take time, right? So
I agree. Yeah. I'm just saying, there's a curse that comes with Postal, and it's that usually stuff doesn't come out anywhere. So for the love of God,
that
break
curse
the
on
curse.
us. Yeah.
At least it'll come out for free on YouTube.
Exactly. No, I mean, like, I think Brain Damaged may have broken the curse. Like, it's out, it came out on time, it's good, so
yeah,
the ball's in your court, boys.
No, it's been really fun working on this documentary. And like I was saying earlier, me and Tad are huge movie enthusiasts.
You should get an interview with J.K.
Well.
Simmons.
We've been trying.
He will not want to talk about that. You know who won't? There's a guy, Dave Foley's in the movie. He's from Kids in the Hall, if you guys are familiar. He's completely naked, full frontal. He will not talk about the movie. So
we got Uwe Boll, which is more than enough for us coming from the movie, and Zach Ward. But I mean, with that being said, I mean, unless if you have anything else, Tad, maybe we should show the Postal 4 trailer.
Let's do it. Let's show the trailer. Yeah.
For those of you that don't know what our games look like, we might as well show you what our games look like.
I regret nothing.
I regret nothing.
I regret nothing. Not you again.
You guys? Wait a minute, are we getting paid for this?
So that's Postal 4. Yeah, her name's, I don't know if I can say her name here. I'm supposed to keep it T for teen. But I do have dolls here, so in case you asked, you can have one.
We're fortunate enough to have all the voices of the former and current Postal dudes in the documentary as well. Corey Cruz, Rick Hunter, John St. John.
Yeah. John St. John is a legend, being Duke Nukem. And so just meeting him, boy, that was crazy.
And Zach Ward.
And
Zach Ward, too.
yeah.
Zach Ward, yep. All the Postal dudes. Yeah, it's been a wild ride. It's been really interesting digging into Postal. I think to me the most interesting thing really is meeting the fans. I mean, obviously, like Mike J was saying, this wouldn't exist without the fan support. And for 25 years, these fans have been coming back, buying the game over and over again and supporting all the products, buying merch. We were fortunate enough to be able to interview a lot of these fans around the world, and it's really interesting to see sort of the reason why people love Postal. It fuels the franchise and it keeps it alive, and it's awesome kind of just getting in front of them. So that's a big part of the project as well, is just kind of the driving force behind what is keeping this franchise going and going strong. They're very vocal too.
Yeah, it's still weird to me sometimes when I'm out and I've got like a Postal shirt on and somebody comes up and they go, "Oh man, Postal, I love that game." You know, I said, yeah, that's my game, I make that game. And then they're just like insanely blown away. And I'm like, to me, just make this stupid thing in our office that we laugh at. And it's crazy to me that this game that I helped make when I was 20 years old is still selling a lot every month. Like Postal 2 is still crazy big. And
for context, can you give us a number of how many copies Postal 2
Well,
has
we
sold?
don't know what it did before we got it on Steam, because the only numbers we saw were out of Russia, and the answer was a few million out of Russia, which is nice. Like years ago, we used to fly to Russia. In the mid-2000s, we'd fly to Russia, and they would take us to these game shows, and they would sit us down at tables, and then we would sign autographs for days, because all these little Russian kids would come up and, "Postal, Postal, Postal, Postal." And to us, we're like, what? Like, what? Why do people know this game? And it was just such a big phenomenon there. I mean, it was different there than even bigger games are here. Like, we went for years in a row, and we would go back, and kids would come with their photos they took with us. "I got this photo with you years ago, sign it." And I'm just like, oh, okay. It's humbling and just weird. Like, it's weird that all these people knew who it was. So for us, it was just crazy that it did these numbers, because we weren't getting paid for much of it. You know, it was like we weren't making a ton of money. We were just known. And when we got the game on Steam, all of a sudden the game was selling tens of thousands of copies a month. And for us, that was huge. And since we've been on Steam, which is since late 2012, we've sold almost 5 million units on Steam, which is totally ridiculous. I mean, it's weird to me. And in the grand scheme, right, like 5 million units in 12 years is the number that like Take-Two would laugh at. But for us, it's like completely ridiculous, and it's a lot. It's a lot for an indie developer of a game that's 21 years old at this point. So
I think one of the fascinating things about Postal being so famous in Russia is when we interviewed a lot of the developers and fans and people from Europe, they told us that they grew up playing Postal and they loved it as kids, and that's what they were playing. And you know, instead of Grand Theft Auto, I guess the case was, you know, a lot of people couldn't afford Grand Theft Auto, and it was.
I mean, even now, right? Even now, like, one of the reasons we sell so many copies is that Postal 2 is $1 every month on Steam sale. So we just get it out there. We're like, this game it's a loss leader at this point. You know, we made it 20 years ago, and we want everybody to play it, and they do, and they review it well. Like I said, it's got a 96%. So, you know, the internet is built for people to complain about things, and don't get me wrong, they complain about plenty of things that we've made, but Postal 2 is not one of them. And it's pretty crazy that, I mean, our team, at this point, there's something like 30 people on our team, and almost everybody on the team came from the Postal modding community. Like, that's kind of our MO, is hiring our fans. And it doesn't always mean the best work's gonna come out of us, because we're not paying for these high-class AAA developers that all make 6 figures plus, and they don't care about the product they're making. We want people that care about the product they're making. They're all working on their favorite game, and that's kind of how we like it now. And the team that made Brain Damaged in Poland, like, Postal 2 is a huge product in Poland too. Like, Poland's one of our top 10 countries, and so everybody on the team there was beyond excited to be working on one of their favorite games. So for us, it's just all goes back to the fans, right? Like, I started out as a fan. I met Vince's son in high school, and he told me his dad owned a video game company, and I started playing this game, and then 3 years later, I was working on it. And everybody, like I said, not everybody. There's a couple guys we've hired from outside of the fandom, but for the most part, our team, the bulk of our team, is just diehard Postal fans. And that does have its negative side too, right? Like, because everybody thinks the game is something else. So when everybody on the team is a fan and we take input from everybody, like our design is by committee, everybody has a different idea of what Postal should be. So it's cool because everybody has such a heavy opinion, but it does sometimes suck because people's brains pull the product in a different way sometimes. So
yeah, you know, it's interesting because we had interviewed your community manager this week, and he
Pedro.
came as a fan as well.
He still acts like a fan half the time.
He still is a fan.
Yeah, it's like, I have to tell him sometimes, like, you have to stop acting like such a big fan and more like an employee, because we get it. You've been here for 1.5 years now. Like, you are now making the game. This is your game, so.
Right. One thing that he said that I thought was really interesting was that, you know, the crunch time at other developers is, you know, it's pretty hefty, but they're running with scissors. You guys don't force the crunch on your employees.
No, we tell them not to.
Yeah, and I think that's beautiful that more developers should start implementing that into,
Yeah, I mean, this is completely nothing to do with Postal, but diminishing returns is what it's called. Like, the industry is filled with diminishing returns, right? Like, Rockstar and all these big companies force these employees to, like, sleep under their desks and work these insane hours to make these games that are really, really good. I mean, you see these games do things that you can't imagine games do, and it's because they are sucking the life out of their employees. And you talk to a bunch of these ex-developers that worked on these AAA titles, and they're like, I'm never going back to the video game industry again. And we've definitely hired a few people who have come from bigger developers, and they're just, like, blown away by the fact that we tell them to stop working. and so, yeah, just remember when you're playing your favorite game that a lot of blood, sweat, and tears went into it, even if it's crap. I mean, I'll sit up here and talk crap about our own games and other games, but, like, a lot of hard labor went into all this stuff, and people lost families and time, and it's serious. So, workers' rights.
Yeah, no, that's your team is awesome, and it's been really great getting to know them. With that said, we should probably show the Brain Damage trailer.
Yeah.
We got one more video for you guys.
Yeah. Like I said, this is the best Postal game. So if you haven't checked it out, add Postal Brain Damage on Steam. Keep an eye on it. It's crazy good. That's it. That's Postal Brain Damage. It's just a giant meme game. I mean, really, it's topical. It makes
a lot of disturbing imagery.
Stuff. Yeah, that's the whole point. I mean, the whole game is supposed to be this sort of like drunken, drug-addled dream that the dude has. So,
what was it like working with another developer after Postal 3 to finally come to this?
So when Hyperstrange approached us, this was back before we announced Postal 4, so it was sometime in mid-2019. They came to us and they were like, we want to make the next Postal game. And we were like, well, that's not possible because we are. But you guys can work on something maybe. And they showed us a game they had made called Elderborn. And if you're familiar with Elderborn, it's just like this amazing hack and slash game that it's just phenomenal. So we were like, well, these guys are pretty good. And they're a smaller, tighter team, but we had this like horrible PTSD from Postal 3, which was like just completely handing over the reins to our product to somebody else and having virtually no control over it and watching it devolve into just not what we wanted. And at a certain point it should have been canceled and it wasn't. And then it was actually just taped together and released and it didn't work. And then they fired the whole team. So the product that's still on Steam doesn't work. So for us, it's not even an old memory, it's like a constant memory because it's still for sale on Steam. It still costs money. They haven't made it free yet, which is mind-boggling because it's that bad. And so when somebody approached us about making a game, and at that point we had been making our own games for 20 years and we were back in full force, it was like, well, we got to be careful here. Back in the day, in the 2000s, we used to license out a bunch of little brands to be made. There was a Postal Babes mobile game. There was a Postal mobile game. There was Postal 3 coming out. Like, we were totally cool with other developers making games. And the little mobile games that came out were actually pretty novel and worked pretty well. But Postal 3 was so bad, and it was such a big title for us that it was like, it just made it a little scary. And we knew that these guys could put out a good product, so we sort of thought to ourselves, well, we shouldn't say no to this. We should just give them a spin-off, and if it's bad, it's bad. Like if Postal 3 wasn't the third game in an anthology, if it wasn't the next big game, I don't think it would have been such a big deal, right? Like Akela, which is the Russian publisher, so this is going to make us sound even more stupid. They had released their own add-on for Postal 2 a couple years prior, and it was called Corkscrew Rules, Postal 2 Corkscrew Rules, and it is really, 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 really bad. But they didn't make it. They had licensed some other developer in Russia to make it, and it's sort of this Postal meme that exists. Like, people still want to play it, and I think it's on Steam Workshop, and you can play it, and it's just super weird. So for us, it was like, why did we continue to let them make more games for us? And it's because like we didn't have millions of dollars sitting around, and this Russian publisher that had treated us so well and was flying us out all the time, and they were a big company. They had hundreds of people in this office. We were like, well, they're a developer. They make games all the time. They can make the next Postal game. And they were doing a good job of it, and then the economy tanked. So there is reasons. There's a lot of reasons, and but for us, when it was going to happen again, it was like, okay, you're going to make a spin-off. It's not going to be the main series. We have this pretty cool idea that we would have loved to make, but we don't have multiple teams working on multiple projects. So let's see what these guys do with this boomer shooter idea, because their hack and slash is essentially a boomer hack and slash game. It's meant to be in that same ilk of just run and gun instead of guns. It's melee weapons. So originally it was like, okay, make a sample video of what you guys would do, make a cool trailer, we'll put it up on Steam, we'll see how that trailer does, and we'll decide from there. And so they made the original Brain Damage trailer, which if you watch it today, it does not really represent the game whatsoever, but it is a really cool concept for what Brain Damage was. And they made this trailer in like 2 months, and it was all like fully running in game. And we knew right then that these guys were going to do a good job. They sent us the test levels to try. We played them, and we were like, okay, these guys are going to make a good game. And in the time it took them to finish Brain Damage, they had made a couple other games. I can't think of all the games off the top of my head, but look up Hyperstrange on Steam. They've got a bunch of cool little games. And so for us, it was just like this constant affirmation that the game was going to be of quality. And at the same time, we're sitting in-house fighting tooth and nail to get Postal 4 to work. I mean, for us, we kind of overshot our own abilities with Postal 4. Instead of just making the next logical product on the new engine, we were on this new engine. We sold a ton of copies of Postal 4 in early access when we first launched it. So we were like, okay, let's expand the team. Let's make the game we should have made, which it was, our eyes got too big. And making an open world shooter in Unreal 4 is a really tough thing to do, especially for a bunch of indie fans. And that's what we are. Whereas Hyperstrange was working on Brain Damage, which is a very small scale game. It's mostly linear, and it's just very well made. And it makes me kind of wish we made a game like that, but we did not. We spent significantly more money on a much bigger product that's going to carry us for the next 20 years, so we just need to fix it. But Hyperstrange didn't disappoint. I mean, like I said, Brain Damage is definitely one of the best games that's got the Postal name on it, and that's totally okay. Yeah, it's totally okay with us that we didn't make the best Postal game out there. That's
this is why we are making this documentary again. We literally sat down with Mike J here, and he told us the entire story, and we just thought it was fascinating to just hear everything that has happened. A lot of series of unfortunate events, a lot of ups and downs. It's really interesting.
The story I like to tell of it is people are like, why are these guys making a documentary about you? And I'm like, well, aside from the fact that I don't know, a friend said, hey, I know these guys. They're making this web series for gaming, and they want to meet with you. So we finally met up, and I just like blew your tiny minds with this tale of failure, like failing our way up over the past 17 years or whatever. It was 20 years at that point. And it was just such a crazy tale of how we're still in business somehow that you were like, oh, this is not an episode of a web series.
No,
this has to be made into a documentary. And he said that to me, and I was like, sure, whatever you want to do, man.
Follow you around for 3 years with the camera.
You want to watch me pee? You can watch me pee. I don't care. Like, just make it funny.
I've seen him pee before.
Yeah. You want to make this? Make it.
Yeah, I mean, I think what really connected it for me specifically is I remember in middle school watching the Postal movie and knowing about the game, and it just felt like it was meant to be. I mean, we were all living in Tucson at the time, and Running with Scissors is based out of Tucson, Arizona. Me and Tad were living there, and it just all made sense to come together. And since then, we've just been chugging along, shooting this documentary.
Yeah, it's been crazy. And, I think on par of why we wanted to do it is just because Mike and Vince are just bonkers.
Yeah, you guys are interesting people for sure. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, we ran a really successful Indiegogo campaign. I think our initial goal was 20,000.
Yeah,
and we doubled that. Over $40,000 for this project. So we're very thankful to everyone that donated. Making a documentary is not cheap, and it's not easy. I mean, working with millions of dollars blows my mind, let alone working with a $100,000, $200,000 documentary. I mean, $40,000 is a lot of money, but it's also not enough. So we're still working on it, and this is a passion project for us. We both have full-time jobs. We do other things on top of Tad doing filmmaking. He's doing more filmmaking after work, and same with me. So it's been very difficult to do this project, but it takes time, and we're having a great time with it.
Yeah. With that said, we're looking to release it next year, Q4. Our initial goal was this year, but we wanted to put more time into it. We've had chats with early discussions with distributors and how we're going to be getting it out there. So we do plan on having some eyes seen on it once it's all said and done. We do believe that it's going to be a worthwhile project to watch.
Yeah, we have a goal of releasing it on a streaming platform. I mean, obviously Netflix or Amazon Prime or Hulu. I mean, pretty much whoever wants to take this,
Yeah,
it's got legs. The project's got legs.
It's going to be on Pornhub.
Yeah, Pornhub. Yeah, we're really excited to be coming out with this, and I guess with that, we'd love to open up the floor if you guys have any questions for us. I'm happy to take them.
We got some free shirts here for anybody who has a question. We got a bunch of goodies up here.
We're trying to entice a conversation.
that'll be, you know, next steps once we finalize the film. We're definitely going to have those discussions about where we want to, you know, kind of ship it off to as far as, you know,
yeah,
getting it out.
I think when you're going the independent route of producing a feature, documentary, or whatever, there's sort of the two-faceted way you can do it. You can go the festival route and try to get attention that way, or you can go directly to the agents and try to get it released on a streaming platform. We haven't decided yet. I mean, I think making rounds on the festival circuit would be great. A lot of indie films find success on the festival circuit and eventually get to a streaming platform. So there's any number of ways to do it. We're just really focused on post-production right now, but yeah, we should talk about that. Thank you for the suggestion.
Yeah.
They're pointing. I'm not going to point.
Oh, sorry. I saw your hand up earlier.
What guns do we use to shoot the signs? Actually, it changes every single time. So years ago, we used to have big events to do it. We would like get all the Class 3 firearms guys in Tucson together, and we would just, you know, literally pour thousands of dollars into shooting signs for no reason. So it was anything from a Mac 11 to, you know, 44s. But now we have a couple guys that shoot for us regularly, and I think I don't know what they used this past week, but I want to say they were using 9s and 44s.
Do you have one yourself, or you're just familiar with it? Oh, that's awesome.
Well, that's
Nice.
awesome. Yeah.
Yeah. Be careful with the metal. It can catch
Yeah.
you.
Actually, somebody wrote me the other day. I shipped it them. We used to put stickers on the back of the sign that says, "These are actually shot. Be careful. Don't be an idiot." And I stopped doing that. But a guy wrote me, said, "Oh my God, the sign's so awesome. Thank you. You drew a dick on it. That was great. But I'm bleeding all over the place." And I said, "Oh yeah, sorry. They're really sharp." He goes, "It's cool. It makes the sign better."
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. You had another question. So Civi 11, the question was, what's the partnership with Civi? It wasn't really anything more than we saw this guy's videos on YouTube, and he seemed to love everything we did. So when we were working on Postal 4 and it wasn't really announced yet, I hit him up personally and I just said, "Hey, you want to be involved? Clearly you like this product." And he was like, "Yeah, absolutely." And since most of his videos for Postal 2 were him buying crack, we decided that he should be the crack dealer in Postal 4, and he loved that. And so he's the crack dealer in Edenson in Postal 4. And at some point soon, he's going to have his own boss battle in the game too. So, you know, he's done us like an infinite service with all of his videos. And he's the type of guy that does not take paid sponsorships at all. Like, he does not get paid by any developers. All of his money is from ad revenue on YouTube. So when we asked him if he wanted to be a part of it, he's like, "Sure, like, you can't, like, I don't want any money." And we're like, "Great, we don't have any to give you." And then when it came time for like us to release the game, and it was in a really, really messed up state, you know, he played it, he did his video showcasing all of the crap, which is fine because we like making fun of ourselves too. But then we said to him, like, "Hey, we're going to be fixing the game, as you know. Like, that's what we do. We don't leave broken games on Steam, aside from Postal 3, but we can't fix that. It's not our game." And he was like, "Yeah, man, when you guys fix the game, I'll make a new video that showcases all that." And for us, it was like, well, then maybe we should do more for you. And so we offered to give him the boss battle in the game, and he was like, "That's great." So, you know, he doesn't need to gloss over the crap for us. He doesn't do it. You know, when we fix things, he likes to make fun of that because for him, the jankiness of our product is what's so charming. So, you know, a game like Brain Damaged, he says it in his review, like, "This game is too good to be a Postal game." It doesn't have enough problems because our games are known for their problems, and sometimes those problems, even when we fix them, sort of stay in. So
yeah, we actually have plans of having Civi incorporated in the documentary as well. So
yeah, he doesn't want to be on video, but
no,
he'll say something.
He'll say something.
Yeah. Well, you know, getting sued by the Postal Service is like just sort of infinitely funny forever. And while it cost plenty of money to fight that battle, I mean, it wasn't, you know, we have lawyers that'll do work for nothing with that, you know. It just took something like 5 years to win. And it wasn't like we won because we showed up in court and we proved that like we're better than them. They clearly have a bigger legal team than we did. I think it was just over time, you keep delaying and delaying and delaying, and then they misfile something and then you win. So, we beat the Postal Service. And,
ironic, the Postal Service misfiling something.
Right, and what's funny about it, we have the letter, and the letter is pretty funny. Like, he's just saying, this isn't funny, you can't make fun of us. It's actually statistically less likely that postal workers will shoot their coworkers versus, he's telling us this stuff, and it's like, but we didn't make a game about postal workers. It's just called Postal, and just the name has sort of gotten us legs with even people that don't really care all that much about us. Like, Joe Rogan has talked about us multiple times on his podcast, and I don't know the guy. I'd love to go on and talk to him about it, but he likes to use the word postal and talk about how it's sort of left the American lexicon. So him talking about it and then discussing like, oh yeah, there was a game in the 90s based on this. Like, for us, that's cool just hearing that, because, we're not Grand Theft Auto. We're not Unreal. We're not these games that everybody and their grandmother knows, but we do have a big enough cult following that the word does elicit emotions in people, whether it's good or bad. So,
I mean, Postal's even featured in a Black Eyed Peas music video, if you guys didn't know.
Yeah, the original big Black Eyed Peas music video for Where Is the Love shows the kids playing a video game on the TV, and it's Postal too, and then the Where Is the Love logo shows up on it, so it's not the most glorifying portrayal.
Yeah, just a quick funny story. We were actually at a bowling alley. Mike J loves to bowl, and we were filming some B-roll. And sure enough, that music video starts playing up on the screen, and Mike J looks up and he's like,
"Oh, we're in that."
Oh yeah, we're in this music.
And they're
video.
like,
and sure enough, Postal 2, right in the Black Eyed Peas.
And then they asked her like, "Did you tell them to play this?" And I was like, "No."
It was just.
We're in one music video in the entire history, and it just happened to play while we were filming. Yeah.
Yeah. I think they're yeah.
Right. It's hard to say because the bigger games that took they took plenty of controversy. Don't get me wrong, right? Like Grand Theft Auto's hot coffee mod was everywhere. It was talked about everywhere. But these are big companies. Like, there was no backlash. They didn't remove the game from the Xbox store when that happened, okay? We are an indie with nobody backing us. It's very easy for them to tell us to go away. I mean, even 6 years ago, somebody ported the original Postal to Android. And we submitted it onto the Android App Store, and it was in a beta form on there. So they put it up for us. We were running an open beta, and for that, you have to charge people. They don't let you do a free beta, so it was $1. So all these people were participating in the beta. And then I wake up one morning to an email from Google saying, your game is banned from the Android App Store. It violates our terms of service because it glorifies horrific events. It was a very generic email. There was no person that wrote it. And after that, I was like, are you kidding me? Like, it's 2015. It was 2015. I was like, it's 2015. So I spent the next couple hours going through the Android App Store and finding all content that would violate that exact same thing. And there were thousands of things, forgetting the video games that they sell. They sell every Grand Theft Auto. They sell horror movies galore. And I sent them this list. Cool, you don't sell these types of products? Here's a list. And their response was, thank you for letting us know about these other products. Your game's still banned from the Android App Store. So, like, it doesn't matter what we do. Like, we are very easy to cast aside. So I don't know if it would have changed. Like, if Grand Theft Auto 1 had come out before Postal and we had sort of made no waves, if Lieberman didn't take the game in front of the Senate, like, would it have still stayed on store shelves? Maybe, because it didn't get brought up. But long term, the only reason we're still here is because of that crap, right? Like, Postal 1 didn't sell a lot of copies. I mean, it did fine, and it did its job, but it didn't sell a lot of copies because the U.S. Senate denounced it, and then the publisher ran scared. If Panasonic was more like Take-Two, and they said, we don't care, and they used that in their marketing campaign, things would have been very different. Instead, Panasonic sort of ran around saying, just take the games off the store shelves, gave us money and said, go away. So instead of you want to say that they had no balls. They didn't want to push the envelope, and that's okay. I mean, I don't know what I would do in that situation if I'm running a multi-billion-dollar company based out of Japan, and all of a sudden, this is the 90s. It's not now. Not that a lot's changed, because the sensitivity stuff's bigger now than it was then. But as a corporate culture, Panasonic and the Japanese corporate culture, we're not going to handle this whatsoever. So the second it became known as what it was, they were like, get it out. And unfortunately, that's like the kiss of death, because, like I said, when we released Postal 2, nobody was going to touch it. And we were blown away. We were like, there's going to be no problem releasing this. None. And it was like no time had changed, nothing. And it keeps happening. I mean, it happened with Postal 2, it happened with Postal 3. I tried to sell Postal 4 to publishers for 2 years before we released that on early access. I spent time traveling all over the world. We had so much interest. Buyers left and right wanted this game on their publisher, because every publisher knows that if they put money behind something like this, they will make billions of dollars. But when word gets up to the C-suite, or one person in the chain of command is like, absolutely not, that's those guys from the 90s, we don't want to have anything to do with them, and then we get that horrible email that's like, hey man, sorry, somebody higher up than me is not going to let this happen. And then 6 months later, they release something just as bad. So it's give and take here, right? Like, these companies clearly don't shy away from all the violence and controversy. They just shy away from our violence and controversy. So yeah, and long term for us, it's kind of cool, because we're still in control of it. We still own this product 100%. I can do whatever I want for the most part. I mean, right now we're porting Postal 4 to PlayStation, and we will not be able to get away with anything we want, right? Like, they told me straight up the other day, we don't really have an approval process anymore. You just need to follow these guidelines. And it's called the objectionable content criteria. And if you read that, forget my game. Obviously, my game violates every single clause on that sheet. But I could name 10 games off the top of my head that violate every single line on that sheet. So all that really matters is the right person approves your game when you submit it, and then the wrong person never gets word of it later on. Because, as we've seen, it doesn't matter what you submit, it can get pulled later. And this is a small story. We were originally making the remake of Postal 1, which is Postal Redux. We submitted it to Microsoft as a concept. They approved it. They sent us dev kits. We're like, oh my God, we're finally going to be on console. This is going to be amazing. So we never started work on the port, but we finished the trailer for Postal Redux, and we submitted the trailer to them because you have to, all your marketing has to be approved by Microsoft. And so I sent them the trailer, it had their logo in it, and then I get a call at 6 p.m. on a Friday night saying, hey, this is, I'm not gonna say his name, from the ID department, we have to pull approval for Postal Redux. And I'm like, why? And he's like, I don't know, the higher-ups won't allow it. And since then, Postal Redux has not been allowed on Xbox. It is sold on Nintendo Switch. It is sold on PlayStation. But for whatever reason, Microsoft has rejected that game 2 more times. And it was finished. We had a company that ported Redux to all the consoles, and Microsoft has refused it 3 times, even though Nintendo is selling it. So
somebody there got rubbed the wrong way.
Well, that's exactly, like, who's, I can't say a lot of things I want to say. So somebody at Microsoft hates us, and I don't know why. But clearly Nintendo doesn't care, and PlayStation, for the most part, doesn't care.
They don't like the cat silencer, the peeing,
yeah,
the terrorists.
There's plenty of reasons.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
That's crazy, though, that you guys are on it.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's crazy you guys are on Nintendo. Of all consoles, you guys are on Nintendo.
Well, that was the first one, too. Like, the first console we were ever on was the Nintendo Switch, which is totally cool, but I don't want to just be on Switch and PlayStation, because I get 10 emails every single day, messages on TikTok, messages on Instagram. Why can't I buy this on my Xbox? I don't know. And then I get people in Europe saying, why can't I buy this on my Switch? And the answer is because Nintendo of Europe is based in Germany. Postal is banned in Germany. They're not allowed to profit from the sale of Postal. And so all of Europe is denied access to Postal Redux on Switch because Nintendo can't profit from it. So.
And the story continues.
Yeah, I can just keep going on about the censorship we've dealt with, and it's okay. Like, we still are here, we're still making games, and we still have ways getting games to people that can't. So,
Yeah, we thank you guys all for coming out. We went a little over time, but really appreciate everyone that came out and to hear us banter about the documentary and the game. GoingPostalDoc.com if you guys want to support the documentary, see the trailer, buy some merch. Postal's available on Steam. Hit us up on social media at GoingPostalDoc. If you asked a question, please come up. We got a shirt for you. I think there's some Crashy Dolls that Mike J's handed out as well. And apologies to the next panel that's up that we took up some of your time. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, so if you guys want a shirt, come on up. We got extras too. We only have a couple of sizes, but we'd love to meet you. Thanks, guys.